forestry. I've been told forestry hasn't worked up in these parts because once you sort of starting to get something established, a natural disaster comes in and takes them out. And so I wonder the next little step is, do we get like steel rods to help support certain trees in vulnerable areas? And if you're able to mitigate the damage from cyclones, so we can start growing forests that can be also used for production and biodiversity.
Well, I guess the question around that for me would be is that, reforesting is lovely, but if there's no, in my comprehension, everything seems to be around the economy, jobs and growth, the economy.
Yeah.
And so if we can actually work with that in that context, that's currently still where the majority of humanity is putting its focus and orientation, whether it's by hypnosis, distraction, or whether they are feeling forced to do so.
Yeah.
If we can actually make reforestation economically, well, let's say attractive first or viable, but if we can actually prove it to be profitable, then it becomes an industry.
Yeah.
And currently it isn't. It's a very...
Well, we were just talking about barriers to change.
Yeah.
So even if you have a proposition for them, it's quite clear you can do all sorts of things with the car park. But then their emotional attachment to it's just a little bit funny. It's like you need to prove without a doubt, and you need to be some kind of a visionary stepping in. Okay, here.
Yeah, but they can't hear that language, and that's where the leverage come in. So the economy is that leverage. This will be good for your economy. This will create jobs. It will create growth, and it really doesn't matter whether that actually is what your ethics are on for. Because for me, fuck the entire economy. It's a total fictive, debt-driven, slave-based system, and that's just how I see that.
I've got a hex debt,
but I don't feel any unnice feelings about that anymore. So I can actually I've gotten over the failure of the authority calling themselves the global elite, and really see wow, fuck, it's really happening. I'm really going to accept that it's happening instead of mentally fighting it. And then by accepting it, I can really ask myself, so what do I do? All right, so now this economy is the thing. Okay, I was upset with it. I don't want to do with the economy. I want to just be on the fringe and just change the system from the outside. And now I'm just really if that's their language, cool. Totally, I can see straight through that because it's as 2D on a piece of paper as can be. There's nothing holistic about it or syntropic. So apply that and put that into the model and say, well, jobs and growth and the economy will really get a boost out of this. And the environment will benefit as the secondary aspect of it, and then the community will, benefit directly because they all got a job. But what we're doing in the process, we're not just reforesting with natural forestries, we're actually creating a commercial industry that plants various fruits, vegetable crops, while actually producing timber as a way of that's creating forest
creating
forest dynamics to accelerate the growth of the rest of the commercial growing environment. And I don't know if you're familiar with Syntropic Agroforestry, but that's how I comprehend that to be. That's redesigning forests that are commercially orientated, that still do entirely the same that a forest does, but it's on a fucking straight row. Okay. And it's really, really beautiful. It comes out of Brazil, and it's kicking ass.
So Syntropic Agroforestry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you want to hear anything about that, then we can talk about that. I like that. I haven't been recording anything.
That's okay. I've been recording something on this. It's still going.
No. Yeah, if you have any questions around that, because it for a lot of people it's actually new terminology.
Yeah.
And if you want, I can share a little bit around how I comprehend syntropy and syntropic force to work. It's not really a force, it's actually nature. It's how it operates.
So Syn, not sim, not symbiotic.
Syntropic.
Okay.
It comes from syntropy. It's basically neg entropy. So what so-called science has discovered over time is that there is such a thing as decay and entropy. But that's actually, when we really observe nature, that's looking over the long-term cycle of nature. So like, look, the seed comes up and then it does all of its things and then it dies. So that's entropy. But entropy is really only applicable to man-made systems, because a car is just a total example of entropy. You put fuel in it, you burn the fuck out of it, you move forward, but you lose a fucking shitload of the energy that you were using, and you can't use it again. It's gone. That's an entropic system. Well, then there's a term called neg entropy, and neg entropy is basically cyclical ways of energy in a field, in a sphere, in a environment, moving around. Well, I'm not really in favor of saying what something is not. So to call something neg entropy, like it's not entropy, well, what is it then? And that's where syntropy comes in. And syntropy is a term that's been around for a substantial amount of time. It just hasn't really been applied in a lot of fields of science, especially not environmental sciences, to my knowing. And it's been adopted, like this beautiful man in Brazil, Ernst Gooch or Gooch. Sounds.
Ernst Gooch?
Yeah.
Okay.
He developed not the terminology. He developed the experience-based practice of how to reforest an entirely degraded agricultural landscape that had only dried up springs that weren't flowing. And over a 30-year period of time, he has entirely regenerated that. It's a phenomenal amount of land. I don't know the acreage, but it's huge. He's got 14 springs flowing year-round. It's entirely reforested. He's growing the world's best cacao, and it's entirely organic. He doesn't have any inputs. All that he uses is what the forest produces. And what the forest produces in its symbiotic relationship with other plant life, he is able to catalyze the syntropic sort of force as trees from the ground up pull in the waters and precipitate that outward. But also because of forest's dynamic with the atmospheric interactions, where trees are, rain starts coming. And when that principle is applied to make forest commercially orientated, we have seen, and it's really evident in his own documenting of his own processes, that are like, you can go and visit these places. And Syntropic Agroforestry in Brazil is really catching on in a big way. These places really work, and he is developing with that not just one monocrop or maybe 2 crops or maybe 3 crops. Like, he's got 12 crops. That's the system is to create a whole range of companion-based planted species that are all commercially tradable. And what the forest aspect in the Syntropic Agroforestry to me seems to be is that by pruning the trees, in my comprehension from my studies of Holmgren and permaculture, it was indicative that when you would take the tree branches off, that a similar amount of root structure would shrink, because the top is like as above, so below. And it has never really landed for me, but I sort of stuck with that because I really appreciated Holmgren's visionary and professional capacity to relate everything about the permaculture principles. But as it turns out, when trees get pruned, it actually sends a signal down to the roots of the tree that says, "Hey, hello, we gotta reproduce. We actually gotta boost the growth." And so new energy shoots up to the top of the tree where the new branches form, and younger branches, younger leaves are photosynthetically more active, and they produce more of the whole cyclical energy cycling. They also sequester more carbon than the leaves of the trees that are hanging on the bottom of the branches. So the tree is actually spurring in its growth, it's going straight up, and so what you don't actually get is the ground cover that then shades out everything underneath it, because it actually just keeps going up and up and up. And it's really beautiful because it activates and accelerates the growth of the trees, which then are harvested for their carbon, their material purpose is to actually then put it onto the land and let it do what it does in a forest. And we all know that's where the mycelium really comes in, because you chop all these big chunks of trees up and you lay them in rows. Well, wow, that's where the micro fungi come in, and they are the walking paths, or they're the new planting beds that just need a little bit of mulch on top, and you stick little seedlings in between. They got anything in between two trunks is just such a nutrient dense feeding pod. And so it basically resolves so many different aspects that in agriculture are challenging to resolve within, whether it's a permaculture farming system. There's always outside inputs required. But in the Syntropic Agroforestry system, the forest provides not only under the ground the support system to stimulate the other root growth of the other species, but it also provides, by the chopping and dropping, the continual mulching. So you don't have to get any hay in, you don't have to get any outside resources in if you don't want to, but it also provides the real wood that initially will be used to build up the soil. But over time, if you plant the right species of trees, you're going to have, just like Bill Mollison stated in his original idea of permaculture, is like, you get a plot of land, you plant a certain amount of that land out with trees, because that's your pension, that's your future, that's an investment into the future that in 25 years you can access. And it's a very common practice even today that's done on many lands. It's just that nobody really thinks about them, like we love lawns or something like that. It's a bit of distortion there going on. But yeah, the Syntropic Agroforestry model, to my comprehension, is something that has the capacity, because it's totally economically motivated for people that want to work with an economic system. It will be applicable and templatable and integratable. It doesn't matter where you go, because you can grow trees, you can grow fruits and vegetables, and you can work out how to let that interrelate. And so the syntropic model, how I see it, how I see nature and life operating, is this tube toroidal field of energy. And I don't know if you've ever seen these pictures of that humans have this energy field around themselves, like this man called Drew Melchizedek brought a lot of that awareness sort of to us, and it's apparently all scientifically validated. I never checked the sources, so I don't believe it until I've done the research, and I'm not going to do the research. But what I do know is that I see this cycle of energy, whether it's drawing it up through the roots, getting it into the leaves dropping again. It's becoming really evident to me that cyclical nature is really present. And I see that as a tube toroidal field. So I take it out of the 2D, because trees are not two-dimensional. They're fully three-dimensional shaped. And so I see that as this tube toroidal field that just pulsates energy. And the way that the tube toroidal field can support itself without us actually making this tube torus turn is that if at the core of the torus field is the trunk, and it produces from the roots. But the only way that the roots will be fed again is when that energy is returned. And so in order to support the field, there must be a yield. And I see in that nature is just so wildly, whether we call that intelligent or whether it's just how life is. It's how it operates. And when we start designing business models around this syntropic nature, then we will find very likely that all aspects involved in a business, whether we like it or not, which is the social, the economical, and the environmental, it all starts thriving to one degree or the other. It starts improving in its health, its vitality, its resilience, its achievements, its yield, and with that, its abundance. And the beautiful thing about forest and about food forest is that it always produces more than what it takes to produce it. Well, if we as humans can work out how to develop those systems and apply them to an economic model, then we're creating economically totally awesome systems that are going to be very attractive to enter into as a businessman or as a business entrepreneur. And that will make, as a byproduct, the reforestation of the earth a total commercially viable exercise. And I do see this taking shape and root in the sound of it to stay with trees, predominantly in cultures that are not really heavily influenced by the Anglo-Saxon, I don't know, places that haven't necessarily been colonized by the Western sort of flagships of Britain and have been democratized by American.
Because it's one thing to say, hey, we don't need Coles and Woolworths when we can do this, but to make people listen to that is another story.
Yeah. And that's where, for me, that economic aspect comes in. Because it's so lovely to talk about permaculture. It's great. Like, I love it. I've loved it for over 14 years or 15 years. And for me, my niche is social permaculture. How do permaculture principles apply to businesses? How do they apply to groups? How do they apply to communities? How do they apply to bioregional systems? And how do we design with that socially and apply the 12 principles and the other aspects? And it's totally doable. It's just it's a relatively new thing, and the word permaculture is still a bit. Permaculture doesn't deal with the economy. It doesn't involve you making money necessarily from your permaculture farm. It's you becoming more self-sustainable, more self-reliant, and that's relevant and beautiful. But that doesn't necessarily make it attractive for a business investor to say, I want to support your idea in a permaculture farm because I'm going to get a return on investment. No, supporting a permaculture farm, the only people that make money in permaculture, to be quite frank, are people that become permaculture teachers. There's maybe a few places that actually produce an abundant amount of product that they sell to local markets, and they are able to sustain themselves with it. But the predominant over amount that I recognize and see, and not that is a bad thing, but permaculture is not an economic proposition to a businessman. But syntropic agroforestry entirely is. You can have $1 million farms, banana farms, transition into syntropic agroforestry. Sugarcane farms. You can actively transition these places. And it's just simply by multi-cropping and intercropping other species and of course transitioning out of the industrial fertilizing destructor culture, because that leads to just more business as usual, more holes in the ground as in the shape of mines. And so if we can create economically viable industry in the production of food, timber, and then like if we're looking at
spread from the north to south.
If we're looking at the tropical areas, like for instance, we're here in the tropics and we're going to set up a syntropic agroforestry farm. The intercropping species that I would use is cacao, coconuts, coffee. Well, now we're talking about 3 rather versatile, diverse products that already have a totally established market. Like it's not going to be really hard to sell organic coffee. Okay, because who's not drinking coffee on the earth that lives around city environments? Well, you know, there's some people that are smart enough and clever enough to not yank their adrenals up with that stuff all the time. But there's a lot of people that really appreciate it. So coffee is, boom, right there you got a solid business ground for a product that will find a market. Now here's coconut. And I'm not talking about, you know, how you can weave with it and how you can, you know, use the timber after 25 years. No, oil, the flesh, the husk. It is. I have looked into coconuts for over 2.5 years myself, actively climbing. I got a coconut cooperative here in Cairns. It's all very community driven, and I'm exploring what you can all do with coconuts. It's phenomenal, and they get that in India, they get that in Thailand, and they get that in all these places because that's where all our coconut oil comes from. $19 for a liter.
Yeah.
So okay, coconuts, that's a proven industry. And now we got cacao. Well, you know, the last time I checked, chocolate is really on the top of people's list because it endorphinates their neurochemistry. It really gives them lovely chemical and activity going on in their brain and in their body, and it tastes nice. And if it's not done by the big corporations, it's actually made from pure products, and it doesn't need soy lecithin. It can just have beautiful cacao butter and cacao nectar. It's awesome. So now we got some boutique industries, and these are only 3. We haven't even talked about the local farmers market where we're going to sell the tomatoes, the basil, the garlic chives, the tree lettuce, the tomatoes, the intergrowing pumpkins and cucumbers, and we're also growing lemons because it's nice to have establishing fruit trees in amongst all of these. And we're also doing some bananas because they are really, really awesome to have as a species intercropping, because it all attracts different species of birds. It all attracts different pollinators. It all attracts, like when we create very diverse systems because of all the different species that we're planting, we're going to attract all the different species that love those plants. And so now we got a system that is holistically looking after itself, and all we really need to do is accelerate its process. And Ernst has worked out that is mainly done by pruning and applying some techniques that just accelerate the establishment of the humus layer of the forest soil, which feeds the entire food web, which then takes us into the mycology, the ecology of the soil web in the mycelium. And so I wouldn't sell that aspect really to any farmer, because the farmer really is trying to work out, how do I keep my farm, and how am I going to take this farm to a level where my kids will actually maybe want to take it over.
Yep.
But first he's working out how he's going to get them through uni, or something like that. So it's about meeting the farmers where they are, which is the economic mindset, because they got a lot of pressures on their
scarcity model.
And I can tell you, I have a lot of experience by running the local food network here in Cairns. I have a lot of experience around the actual reality of what farmers really deal with, the pressures that they're really under because of the business as usual model, because of the distribution systems, because of the way that the market sort of is not necessarily driven. It's driven by control more than it is really by this idea of demand and supply. Because there may not be a lot of pumpkins in supply, and one would say, well, the price of pumpkins should then rise through the roof. Now, the pumpkin price will rise through the roof at the place called the supermarket. But it doesn't mean that because a pumpkin costs $3 a kilo in the supermarket that the farmer got half of that. And so to create these propositions for farmers, I have a feeling that Syntropic Agroforestry has a long ways to go in this country. But it's landing. The first courses are being given in April.
Okay.
They're given down in Byron Bay area.
Are the TAFE down there?
I don't feel it's associated with the TAFE from my involvement in the project so far, and my interactions with the people that are actually putting all of that together, getting the trained teachers to teach trainers here, to teach actually advanced courses. So there's an introduction course and an advanced course coming up, to actually create leaders in that field, to fully empower them so that we can start transferring more of this to. And I want to go there. I've already booked in. I'm on to acquire the more in-depth scope of knowledge of how it really works in the forest layers, and how the commercial models really operate. But once I got all of that, I've got an entire farmers network here that I then feel really competent to speak to, because I actually comprehend the economic way of because if I go to them now and say, hey, you know what I think you should do? You should plant a whole bunch of trees and then bananas and all of these other things, and it will be really good for you. Now I want to go to a farmer and say, hey, I want to help you not only save money, but I want to help you make money and turn your farm into the future, into a promise for your children that they will actually want to be on this land, that they actually will want to grow here. Because these kids are watching the farmers work from 5 in the morning till 5 at night at least, with a little break in between and a smoko and all of that, busting their asses. It's a lifestyle, but it's hard work. And what did they really get? Where did they really go? Well, farmers don't necessarily want to go to Brisbane to spend money in a casino. They're happy where they are, usually, in my experience. But is that what the children then want? Because there is a big world out there. There's a lot of things to see. There's a lot of things on offer, and it all seems so amazing because there's MTV, and television in and of itself is enough of an hypnosis device to make younglings want to go and see other things. And by all means, let them travel. But how can we share with farmers that as their younglings go and travel and do all the things that kids need to be doing, or students need, whatever we want to call them, that they're actually building on a future. They're investing into something that kids may actually want to come back to, because if they look at their dad now, they likely won't want to do what he's doing, because that doesn't look very intelligent. Because convenience land out in the city environment just shows work less. And if you don't want to work, that's okay too, because you can just go on the government benefits, just milk that system for a while. So there's not a lot of motivation from the societal point of view for younglings to go and interact in the future on traditional monocrop farms. But if we can inspire farmers through this system of syntropic agroforestry that actually is proven to work, that they can actually transform their farm over a period of 10 years' time. It's not going to cost them more money. Their investment is going to be a return to them, because they'll not only keep the farm, the kids will want to come and work, and you know what? There'll be other young people that will want to work with those kids that by then are old. And so this is how I'm relating to resolving a lot of the global issues, that it's great to replant and to reforest with native species, but by all means, let's make it an economically viable process, so that a business investor can say, okay, I see that that's proven, and I see how your system design works, and I see all of these, we only discussed three markets, boutique markets. But any business investor can look at that and see, like, wow, we got 18 species here, including timber. Okay, how much money do you need? Well, we need $1 million. Okay, well, write me a nice business plan and we'll talk further. And I really feel that that's possible. And this is something that, in my comprehension, permaculture hasn't been able to deliver. Because of the economic element not being really...
It's contrary to the economic.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't fit the global food supply system at all. It doesn't fit any of that. And
no.
As soon as I think the government was just about to put all this money into all these big permaculture places, then they kind of did the math and was like, oh, it's not going to export, and
sorry,
didn't bother.
That's where the pin gets pulled. And this syntropic agroforestry systems, as I have seen them from my research, there's a lot of young people that are re-inspired about working with the land, because they're not only supporting themselves and their families, they're regenerating deserted, degraded, totally exhausted landscapes. And that, being a human on the earth and doing our bit in environmental stewardship by regenerating our capacity to regenerate, and in that nourish ourselves financially, emotionally, spiritually, nourish our community with the food that is nutrient dense, organic. Like, this is win, 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 full spectrum, win all around. And all that it really takes is that intelligent approach to taking up somebody's 30-year-long experience and saying, well, look, we've got the proof, it's already here. Let's go run with this. And this is what's happening. This is my inspiration. This is what I'm actively involving myself in, and this is what I feel is a real catalyst for solving and resolving a lot of the burning empires. damage. And in that's where that syntropic model, everybody is included, the economy is included, the health and wealth of the community is included. Gosh, the environment is going to be restored and thriving, and nature, it's not like we have to go grow the trees. That's the beautiful thing about it. Nature loves being nature. Does it really well. Does really well at being itself. So it's not like we need to go into a factory and cook up a whole range of mechanical systems. No, we just actually need to emulate and work with nature in a way that accelerates that forest dynamic, which then yields a whole range of economic boutique markets that anywhere on the planet can be locally distributed, and with a little bit of luck, it's becoming evident that quality is really still relevant. Quality in wine, quality in coffee, quality in cacao. People want it. And what a lot of I have quite a few friends that own coffee shops, and what they're really on about lately in the sphere of coffee, which is a whole universe in and of itself, they want to go back to the source. They want to be able to connect with where that coffee comes from. They want to experiment with how can we do it a little bit different, and how would that work, because the people love to hear about that. And so we're getting that connection all the way back to the farmers, and I have a feeling that if it goes the way that my fantasy is fantasizing about all of this syntropic agroforestry, is that we're going to have amazingly inspired people doing what they love doing based on total integrity in place, integrity-based food growing production systems. And the only issue would be transport. But that's something that I feel will work itself out, because the suppression of riding cars on hydrogen or electricity or free energy, that suppression that J.P. Morgan put onto humanity way back in the days when you put a meter onto, if I can't put a meter on it, then I don't want to. So he pulled the funding on this beautiful mammal called Tesla. And I see that's just a matter of time for that to sort of fade out and fizzle out. This fantasy of fossil fuels, that's not made of fossils. That was just a nice word to coin a resource that then became more scarce just by calling it fossil. It has nothing to do with fossils. And they know that. But it really worked, because everybody got put on the fossil fuel train. And that train is slowly... it's good that we have it right now, because we do not have the systems in place, but I see that market and that industry growing and expanding, and the company Tesla in and of itself is an evident showcase that's moving ahead. Where that leads us to in the short term, I don't really care. I just think that if we can grow food locally in a syntropic agroforestry system, the whole community around that system is going to benefit. And that's tangible change. That's something that us three could decide that we want to put a system like that in place. We could get in touch with the mammals that know about how to do this. Can we get some templates? We got a bit of land. We want to put this in place. And I feel really, really good about that. That this is for and by the people, and it's a system that is for all living life in its microenvironment. And then when we extrapolate that to the bigger system, the more trees we plant, the healthier that is for the sequestering of carbon, which is, continuously a growing issue. And not so much because we drive that many cars or we got that many cows shitting on the planet that excrete, methane into the atmosphere. I think both of those are sort of like, they're just a byproduct of human existence on the earth at the present. It's not ideal. It's deforestation that's the issue.
Yep.
So I think this is killing not just two birds with one stone. This is a full spectrum approach that anybody can go and apply in their own backyard if they really want it. It's just that their syntropic system is going to be really small. Yeah. So that's my bit that I feel to share on my comprehensions around it and my inspirations, and I feel really, really good about the prospect, about this fantasy that this is going to take root. And it's going to transition the way that we do business, It's the way that we relate to business. It's the way that we relate to nature as a resource. Because it is inevitable that appreciation, which is only natural for us as the creatures that we are, as the mammals that we humans are, it's only natural to be in awe and admiration of nature. But our hijacked, synthetic, hypnosis-based system of consumerism has sort of distracted us, our natural attraction to trees and forest floors and the sun and the stars and the mountains and the water, to shiny packaged shrink-wrapped items with barcodes on it